So we're coming up on a time pressure because a lot of people are saying that we have to see whether or not there's going to be like a merged candidacy before the Lunar New Year holiday, which is next week. That would be the most ideal in the sense of like an organized political kind of machinery to be in operation. Most likely that won't happen, but we are going to get the first debate between Jae-myung and Yoon Seok-yeol. But they have shut out Ahn Cheol-soo. And Ahn Cheol-soo, he does his own YouTube and he answers questions and, he kind of seems a little bit like a tech nerd, but he's shady too. But he's real fast with his shady comments. And so if you don't pay attention, you kind of miss it. But he explained why he thinks that they just shut him out. He said simply one-on-one, if I went up against Jae-myung, everybody would just, he says the data shows that people would side with Ahn Cheol-soo. And then he said that with Yoon Seok-yeol, they kind of have an overlapping voter base. So the more that he goes up, he kind of takes away votes from Yoon Seok-yeol. So there is an incredible incentive to shut him out because if there were a three-way debate, essentially at the end of the debate, Ahn Cheol-soo would end up with taking away votes from both sides, and he would end up even stronger at the end of this debate. So of course, there is absolutely no incentive to include Ahn Cheol-soo in this debate. And so he's saying that's why they're shutting me out. So I think, Ahn Cheol-soo, it is time for you to throw a party because there is nothing like a party that collects the enemies of my enemy to make some new friends. So Ahn Cheol-soo is now polling at the highest he has polled at 17%. So that's almost 20%. And one of the kingmakers in Korea, he's kind of considered the godfather of elections, Kim Jong-un. And he was the campaign chair of Yoon Seok-yeol, the conservative, before he got ousted in that big old civil war that happened with the conservatives, basically Christmas to New Year's. He said that if Ahn Cheol-soo doesn't poll above 18%, we have no consideration over merging the candidates. I'm like, dude, you got ousted. What kind of pool do you have right now? And also, what's the difference between 17% to 18%? So I think this dude is stalling because there's no offer, I think, that's been set. So this is where I think Ahn Cheol-soo needs to get to work. He is basically, Kim Jong-un, the godfather guy, I think he's basically telling the Ahn camp publicly, it's y'all better get on your game and start writing up these offers. If Ahn is the candidate, what y'all gonna give us? What is going to be the system and what is going to be the kind of power package that you're gonna offer us? Because literally, I've heard this firsthand, the people that are part of this whole political crowd or the machine, whenever there's a campaign, they meet up in groups and then they basically if you've been kind of part of the machine, they're always okay guys, just write down, if we win, what you want, what do you want to be the head of? What government agency do you want? What, government-led corporation do you want to be the head of, as your reward for, supporting, So basically, you got to get to work with making your appointees. And that's kind of like the greasy of the whole political thing. And I think that's what the voters want to get away from, but that is the unfortunate nature of. See, that's the problem, you voters. You voters want the stability of the political institution, but that's what the political institution is, okay? So if you don't want this whole thing about like, you know, all these old men who get to say like, well, I want to run this now, I want to run this now, and they don't even know what the heck they're doing, that is the political machine that you can't, you know, get yourself away from. So if you don't want all these crusty old men to basically be supporting that political machine to give your illusion of stability, then leave now. Leave now and move over to Ahn Cheol-soo, because all of the polling says that like, well, if we were forced to have Ahn Cheol-soo as the only person that we could vote for, then he basically wins by this huge margin. But they're like, yeah, but we want to have the party, and I don't think we really want to, like, you know, give up the party. I don't really think that we should split the party. And then, you know, then they just like stick with their party. But if they were forced to basically say like, okay, it's Ahn Cheol-soo versus Jae-myung, Ahn Cheol-soo wins by a landslide. So I think right now, Mr. and Mrs. Voter, are you going to give up your crusty old men who are just basically going to be running institutions that they have no business running and run them into the ground because you think that's more stable for the country? Or do you want to basically just do your own homework and get it together? But this is the real world where Ahn Cheol-soo now has to put on his baker's cap and has to make some delicious pastries for these crusty old men to start eating so that they get lured over and say like, okay, I'll give you this, I'll give you that. You know, if we win, you're going to get this position and that position. Because now he can throw a party and lure these people over from both sides. Why do I say this? Because over on the liberal side, this Jae-myung also has a lot of enemies because, you know, his wife, I mean, we're going to get into this too, but y'all know his wife was accused of being one of the biggest internet trolls in this country. Oh, yes, she is. She had to go into the court for questioning. This was about 3 years ago. I mean, she was able to slide out of it, but I mean, I think everybody knows, and especially the people in power probably really know the truth because, I mean, they basically can hack into anything. And so in terms of like the official word and the official, you know, ruling of the court said that she wasn't the internet troll, but she went through the ringer in the media and then also with the courts. They investigated her because, I mean, it backfired on her. I mean, in another country, I guess you can have freedom of speech, but she was just going after people, and especially like even President Moon, like she was doing all sorts of like just internet trolling with like Twitter, Gmail, like all of her accounts. And they were like, you know, they were just saying like, this is you, girl. We know this is you. Just admit that this is you. You. And she's like, no, that's not me. It just looks like my ID from all this other stuff, but that's not me. That's not me. And, you know, she totally denied it and she got away with it. But I'm sure that damage is lasting. You know, there's probably like people within the Moon camp, the current government, that don't like this guy, especially the wife. And then also the Lee Nak-yeon camp was supposed to be the next in line to then become the president-elect, and that primary was real contentious, and he felt like, you know, Lee Jae-myung played real dirty. I'm sure that team over there don't really like him. So y'all need to do, this is what I would suggest, Mr. Ahn Cheol-soo, next week you organize a debate viewing party as if you are zooming into this debate remotely as the third debater. While they're doing their debates one-on-one, you're butting in online as if you are the third debater. Doesn't matter what they're saying, you are going to respond to whatever they're bringing up. You make people watch your channel instead of tuning in to whatever broadcast network got the rights to do the debate, and have people want to watch your reactions first, and like to have your thoughts on whatever issues are out there, and have that more fun, and then make it a party. Invite the Moon people that don't that have an issue, maybe some of the Yoon people that didn't. I mean, of course they probably wouldn't at this point show their faces publicly, but I think at least in your mind at this point, you should have a list of names. You should definitely have a list of names and invite them, at least in your mind, and maybe even quietly invite them and say okay, if you did join us, and if we did win, this is where you would go. Or tell us, what would you want? What organization would you want to run? Same thing on the other side. And definitely to that party leader, Lee Jun-seok, because what is he gonna get? People are just saying maybe you're gonna have to offer him prime minister or something like that, the youngest Korean prime minister maybe, in the history. And whoever is still kind of reeling and feeling bad that they were ousted from the campaign or whatnot, you're gonna have to start lining up the people who are basically the enemies, and then maybe in a weird way you are creating that true middle ground, that progressive side that captures both sides of the liberal and progressive camp, and you really are that third party that really does unify the country. Isn't that what you're trying to do anyway? And trying to create that forceful middle that then becomes maybe a political powerhouse. It might be worth a shot. And so that might be an interesting thing, but at least you should throw a party. You should at least have your own debate channel set up during their debate, so that you're gonna crash their, make it so that they're crashing your party, and make it so that your opinions are gonna be out there. But really think about making these moves, dude, because once you are, and if you do, I know it's your goal to try to hit 20%. At that point, it's gonna be too late for you to start doing this stuff. It should be already blueprinted, drafted, and set up. And if you don't do this, I think, you don't want it to start falling down at going to 16, 15, back to 12%, because then that's going to be way too late. So Mr. Ahn, you got to use this weekend to get it together, dude, and be a force for next week's debate. All right, guys, what do you think? I think he can really throw a good party. All right, guys, see you next time. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.